In the shadow of marble columns that echoed with empty victories, Alexander Hale stared at the faded photo of a life unlived, until a girl's tear-streaked whisper cut through, "I wish for a father's love," and in that breath his armored world cracked wide open. The penthouse perched like a crown on the city's skyline, all glass and steel, reflecting a world that bent to Alexander Hale's will. At 42, he was the architect of empires, biotech ventures that saved lives he never touched, boardrooms where his word was gospel. But tonight, as thunder grumbled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Alexander stood alone in the cavernous living room, a tumbler of scotch balanced in his steady hand. The amber liquid caught the low light from a single lamp, casting shadows that danced like ghosts across the polished teak floors. He didn't hear the soft knock at first. His mind was elsewhere, snagged on the silver-framed photo on the mantel, Elena, radiant in a sun-dappled garden, her hand cradling a belly that had promised everything and delivered nothing. 5 years since the accident, 5 years since the world had tilted and left him grasping at voids. He raised the glass, the ice clinking like a mocking toast, when the knock came again, insistent, almost defiant. "Mr. Hale," Maria's voice, frail as tissue paper, filtered through the door. His housekeeper of 15 years, the one constant in his sterile orbit. He set the glass down with deliberate care, the faint tremor in his fingers betraying the exhaustion he buried under tailored suits and clipped commands. "Come in," he called, his tone flat as the city lights below. Maria shuffled in, her once vibrant braid now streaked with silver, her apron wrinkled from hours bent over the sickbed in the servants' quarters downstairs. She clutched a worn shawl around her shoulders, eyes red-rimmed but fierce, the kind of fierce that had scrubbed his floors through fevers and floods without. "Complaint, it's Isabella," she said, her accent thickening with emotion. "No, Lila, her daughter, the girl who darted through his home like a spark, all wild curls and unfiltered laughter, even as she helped her mother with the heavier loads. 22 now, studying art on scholarships that Alexander had quietly extended, though he'd never admit it." "She's with her," Maria continued, voice cracking. "The doctor, he said it's time. Please, senor, just sit with us." Alexander's jaw tightened, a muscle feathering under the shadow of his 5 o'clock stubble. He wasn't built for this, the messy unraveling of lives that weren't his to fix. His own grief had been a private vault, sealed with NDAs and therapy sessions he attended like business meetings. But Maria had been there after Elena, brewing tea he never drank, folding linens with hands that trembled less than his. Debt, he told himself. Loyalty. Anything but the ache that stirred when he thought of that empty nursery. "Upstairs." He nodded once, sharp as a signature on a contract, and followed her down the service elevator. The descent felt eternal, the hum of machinery underscoring the chasm between his world and theirs. The servants' quarters were a forgotten wing, cozy but cramped, walls papered in faded florals, the air thick with the scent of chamomile tea and lingering illness. Lila knelt by the narrow bed, her dark curls spilling over one shoulder as she held her mother's hand. No, Isabella's hand, frail and veined like autumn leaves. Isabella Voss lay propped on pillows, her breath shallow rasps that fogged the dim lamplight. Cancer, the doctors had said, the kind that whispered lies of more time until it didn't. Lila's face, usually alight with that irreverent spark, sketching murals on napkins during rare breaks, humming old folk tunes that made the mansion feel less like a tomb, now crumpled in quiet devastation. Her green eyes, flecked with gold like sunlight on river stones, lifted to meet his. No pleading there, just a raw, unguarded plea that twisted something deep in his chest. "Mr. Hale," Isabella murmured, her voice a thread. "Thank you for coming." She squeezed Lila's hand, then reached for his, a gesture so unexpected he froze, the warmth of her palm clashing with the chill of his signet ring. "You've been kind to us, invisible kindness, but it matters." He cleared his throat, the words sticking like gravel. "It's nothing, rest now." But Isabella's gaze sharpened, pinning him with the clarity of the dying. "No, listen." She pulled him closer, her grip surprisingly firm. "Lila, my girl, she's dreamed big since she could walk. Wishes, you know, silly ones, a pony, a trip to the stars." A faint smile ghosted her lips, then faded. "But life's taken too much. Grant her 4, Alexander, 4 wishes from your world to make hers brighter, promise me." Lila's breath hitched, her fingers tightening on the bedsheet. "Mama, no." "Promise, Isabella," insisted, eyes never leaving his. The room held its breath, the rain now pattering against the small window like impatient fingers. Alexander felt the weight of it, the audacity of the ask, the fragility of the moment. Wishes. He built realities, not fantasies. Yet in Lila's wide-eyed stare, he saw a flicker of Alina's unyielding hope, the kind that had once made him believe in more than ledgers and legacies. "I promise," he said, the words low and irrevocable, like a vow etched in stone. Isabella exhaled, a sigh of release, her hand slipping from his to rest against Lila's cheek. "Good, start, tomorrow." Her eyes fluttered shut, the monitors beeping a final, steady rhythm that would soon flatline. Lila bowed her head, a sob escaping like a dam breaking, silent at first, then raw, her shoulders shaking under the thin sweater that smelled of lavender soap and unfulfilled tomorrows. Alexander stood there, hands useless at his sides, the promise hanging between them like a bridge. Neither had asked to cross. Outside, lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the divide, his empire above, her world below. But in that charged silence, as thunder rolled away, he wondered, not for the first time, what it might cost to step across. Pause for a breath here, dear viewer. What's one wish you've carried in your heart, unspoken, waiting for the right moment to voice? Share in the comments below. Your stories might just spark someone else's courage. Let's build this community of dreamers together. Hit that like button if this hits home, and subscribe for more tales of unexpected connections. In the shadow of marble columns that echoed with empty victories, Alexander Hale stared at the faded photo of a life unlived, until a girl's tear-streaked whisper cut through. "I wish for a father's love." And in that breath, his armored world cracked wide open. The penthouse perched like a crown on the city's skyline, all glass and steel, reflecting a world that bent to Alexander Hale's will. At 42, he was the architect of empires, biotech ventures that saved lives he never touched, boardrooms where his word was gospel. But tonight, as thunder grumbled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Alexander stood alone in the cavernous living room, a tumbler of scotch balanced in his steady hand. The amber liquid caught the low light from a single lamp, casting shadows that danced like ghosts across the polished teak floors. He didn't hear the soft knock at first. His mind was elsewhere, snagged on the silver-framed photo on the mantel. Alina, radiant in a sun-dappled garden, her hand cradling a belly that had promised everything and delivered nothing. 5 years since the accident, 5 years since the world had tilted and left him grasping at voids. He raised the glass, the ice clinking like a mocking toast, when the knock came again, insistent, almost defiant. "Mr. Hale," Maria's voice, frail as tissue paper, filtered through the door, his housekeeper of 15 years, the one constant in his sterile orbit. He set the glass down with deliberate care, the faint tremor in his fingers betraying the exhaustion he buried under tailored suits and clipped commands. "Come in," he called, his tone flat as the city lights below. Maria shuffled in, her once vibrant braid now streaked with silver, her apron wrinkled from hours bent over the sickbed in the servants' quarters downstairs. She clutched a worn shawl around her shoulders, eyes red-rimmed but fierce, the kind of fierce that had scrubbed his floors through fevers and floods without complaint. "It's Isabella," she said, her accent thickening with emotion. "No, Lila, her daughter." The girl who darted through his home like a spark, all wild curls and unfiltered laughter, even as she helped her mother with the heavier loads. 22 now, studying art on scholarships that Alexander had quietly extended, though he'd never admit it. "She's with her," Maria continued. Voice cracking, "The doctor. He said it's time. Please, senor, just sit with us." Alexander's jaw tightened, a muscle feathering under the shadow of his 5 o'clock stubble. He wasn't built for this, the messy unraveling of lives that weren't his to fix. His own grief had been a private vault, sealed with NDAs and therapy sessions he attended like business meetings. But Maria had been there after Alina, brewing tea he never drank, folding linens with hands that trembled less than his. Debt, he told himself. Loyalty. Anything but the ache that stirred when he thought of that empty nursery upstairs. He nodded once, sharp as a signature on a contract, and followed her down the service elevator. The descent felt eternal, the hum of machinery underscoring the chasm between his world and theirs. The servants' quarters were a forgotten wing, cozy but cramped, walls papered in faded florals, the air thick with the scent of chamomile tea and lingering illness. Lila knelt by the narrow bed, her dark curls spilling over one shoulder as she held her mother's hand. No, Isabella's hand, frail and veined like autumn leaves. Isabella Voss lay propped on pillows, her breath shallow rasps that fogged the dim lamplight. Cancer, the doctors had said, the kind that whispered lies of more time until it didn't. Lila's face, usually alight with that irreverent spark, sketching murals on napkins during rare breaks, humming old folk tunes that made the mansion feel less like a tomb, now crumpled in quiet devastation. Her green eyes, flecked with gold like sunlight on river stones, lifted to meet his. No pleading there, just a raw, unguarded plea that twisted something deep in his chest. "Mr. Hale," Isabella murmured, her voice a thread. "Thank you for coming." She squeezed Lila's hand, then reached for his, a gesture so unexpected he froze, the warmth of her palm clashing with the chill of his signet ring. "You've been kind to us, invisible kindness, but it matters." "Well, hey." Cleared his throat, the words sticking like gravel. "It's nothing, rest now." But Isabella's gaze sharpened, pinning him with the clarity of the dying. "No, listen." She pulled him closer, her grip surprisingly firm. "Lila, my girl, she's dreamed big since she could walk. Wishes, you know, silly ones, a pony, a trip to the stars." A faint smile ghosted her lips, then faded. "But life's taken too much. Grant her 4, Alexander, 4 wishes from your world to make hers brighter, promise me." Lila's breath hitched, her fingers tightening on the bedsheet. "Mama, no." "Promise," Isabella insisted, eyes never leaving his. The room held its breath, the rain now pattering against the small window like impatient fingers. Alexander felt the weight of it, the audacity of the ask, the fragility of the moment. Wishes. He built realities, not fantasies. Yet in Lila's wide-eyed stare, he saw a flicker of Alina's unyielding hope, the kind that had once made him believe in more than ledgers. "And legacies." "I promise," he said, the words low and irrevocable, like a vow etched in stone. Isabella exhaled, a sigh of release, her hand slipping from his to rest against Lila's cheek. "Good, start, tomorrow." Her eyes fluttered shut, the monitors beeping a final, steady rhythm that would soon flatline. Lila bowed her head, a sob escaping like a dam breaking, silent at first, then raw, her shoulders shaking under the thin sweater that smelled of lavender soap and unfulfilled tomorrows. Alexander stood there, hands useless at his sides, the promise hanging between them like a bridge neither had asked to cross. Outside, lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the divide, his empire above, her world below. But in that charged silence, as thunder rolled away, he wondered, not for the first time, what it might cost to step across. Pause for a breath here, dear viewer. What's one wish you've carried in your heart, unspoken, waiting for the right moment to voice? Share in the comments below. Your stories might just spark someone else's courage. Let's build this community of dreamers together. Hit that like button if this hits home, and subscribe for more tales of unexpected connections. The rain hadn't let up by the morning of the funeral. falling in relentless sheets that turned the cemetery paths to slick mirrors of gray sky. Alexander arrived early, his black Bentley idling at the wrought iron gates like a beast reluctant to enter sacred ground. He hadn't attended a burial since Elena's, had avoided the scent of wet earth and lilies, the way voices hushed under umbrellas, as if the dead could hear the platitudes. But Maria's call at dawn, her voice hollowed by loss, had pulled him here. Isabella Voss, gone before the sun rose, leaving a daughter adrift in a world that chewed up dreamers. He stepped out, umbrella snapping open with a crack that echoed too loudly. The mourners were sparse, a cluster of fellow housekeepers from the building there. Faces etched with shared hardships, a priest in sodden robes murmuring Latin under a canopy, and Lila, standing alone at the grave's edge, her black dress clinging like a second skin, soaked through despite the futile shelter of a gnarled oak. No father to steady her, no siblings to share the weight, just the girl who'd once sketched fantastical beasts on his discarded blueprints, her laughter a brief rebellion against the mansion's silence. Alexander approached slowly, his polished loafers sinking into the mud, each step a negotiation with the ground that seemed to pull at him, reluctant to let go. The air hung heavy with petrichor and the faint, cloying sweetness of carnations piled on the simple pine casket. Lila didn't turn at first, her curls plastered to her neck, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles gleamed white. When she did, her eyes, those river-stone greens, locked on his, not with gratitude but with a storm of their own, grief laced with defiance, the kind that said she'd bury her mother with fire in her veins. "Mr. Hale," she said, voice barely above the patter of rain but steady as the roots beneath them. No tears now, they'd been spent in the night, leaving her hollowed raw. "You didn't have to come." He cleared his throat, the umbrella tilting to shield her more than himself, though water dripped down his collar like icy fingers tracing old scars. "I promised." The word felt heavier here, amid the headstones that whispered of broken oaths. He glanced at the casket, the engraved plate glinting dully. Isabella Voss, beloved mother, eternal dreamer. Beloved, the word stuck, a thorn against his own unmarked losses. The priest droned on, words blurring into the downpour, but Alexander's focus narrowed to Lila, the way her shoulders hunched not in defeat, but as if bracing for a wind that might scatter her. When the service ended, mourners drifting like smoke toward waiting cars, she lingered, fingers brushing the casket's edge as if committing the wood's grain to memory. He stayed too, the umbrella a fragile dome over them both, trapping the scent of her damp wool and the faint lavender that clung to her like Isabella's ghost. "I meant what I said," he murmured, pulling an envelope from his coat, thick vellum, sealed with his company's crest. Inside, a check for the medical debts, a scholarship extension, and a handwritten note, 4 wishes. Name them and they're yours. Transactional, yes, but it was how he navigated the world. Problems solved with ink and zeros. "Your mother, she wanted this, for you." Lila took the envelope, her touch lingering on his fingers a beat too long, cold skin meeting calloused warmth, a spark in the chill that neither acknowledged. She didn't open it, just tucked it into her pocket, rain beating on her lashes like unshed accusations. "Wishes aren't checks, Mr. Hale, they're pieces of you. Mama knew that. She saw how you look at that photo upstairs, like it's the only color left in your world." His breath caught the umbrella dipping as his grip faltered. How did she know? The photo of Elena, yes, but the longing beneath it, the ache for what might have been a family, a laughter-filled home instead of echoing halls. He'd hidden it well, or so he thought, behind board meetings and bourbon. But Lila saw, with that artist's eye, peeling back layers he armored daily. She straightened, chin lifting against the drizzle, her voice gaining strength like a river swelling after the storm's first drops. "She told me stories about you. Not the tycoon, the man who fixed the leaky faucet himself one Christmas, who left books on her nightstand when she was sick. You give things, but you don't give. You." A pause, heavy as the mud at their feet, her gaze searching his face for cracks. "So if we're doing this, fine, my first wish." The world seemed to slow then, the rain softening to a hush, as if the oaks themselves leaned in. Alexander braced, expecting the practical, a trip, a painting set, something his wealth could conjure without cost to his guarded heart. But Lila's eyes softened, vulnerability flickering like candlelight in a draught, grief cracking open to reveal the child beneath, the one who'd chased fireflies while waiting for a father who never came. "I wish," she whispered, the words deliberate, each one a stone skipped across still water, "for a father's love, just once. The kind that tucks you in at night or scares off monsters under the bed. Not pity, not payment. Real, warm, the kind I never had." The words landed like a thunderclap without sound, reverberating through him. Speechless, Alexander stood frozen, the umbrella forgotten as rain traced rivulets down his face, tears or droplets, he couldn't tell. A father's love. It echoed the void in his own chest, the nursery he'd sealed after Alina's miscarriage, the crib gathering dust like unspoken apologies to a child who'd never breathed. He'd built fortunes to outrun that emptiness, but here. It was mirrored in Lila's unflinching gaze, her absent father, a ghost of bad debts and broken promises, his own regrets, a ledger of what-ifs. His mouth opened, closed, words failing the man who commanded rooms with a glance. Instead, a low rumble escaped, not anger, but something primal, raw. Lila, her name, for the first time without the formal distance, hung between them, subtext thick as the mist rising from the graves. It said, "I see you." It said, "I know this ache." It said, "What if I could?" She didn't flinch, but her lips trembled, the envelope crinkling in her fist. "See, it's not so easy, is it? Wishing for the heart." A beat, then softer, laced with the salt of unshed tears. "Mama said you'd understand, that we're both missing pieces." The rain picked up again, drumming on the leaves overhead, but neither moved. In that suspended moment, under the indifferent sky, Alexander felt the bomb detonate, not destruction, but illumination. Her wish wasn't a demand, it was an invitation, peeling back his armor to reveal the lonely boy he'd buried long ago, the one who'd vowed never to need anyone again. And Lila, in voicing it, bared her own scar, the abandonment that fueled her fire, the belief that love was a fairy tale for others. He extended a hand, not for the envelope, but palm up, an offering, tentative as a first step. She hesitated, then placed hers in it, their fingers interlacing with a quiet click, like puzzle edges finding home. No words now, just the shared shelter of silence, the rain washing away pretenses as thunder grumbled farewell in the distance. Hey friends, as we lean into this spark of vulnerability, think, what's the one wish from your past that, if granted, might still rewrite your story? Drop it in the comments. Let's turn these moments into mirrors for each other. If Lila's boldness resonates, smash that like and subscribe. We're just getting to the heart of it. The drive back from the cemetery was a blur of wipers slashing at the relentless downpour, the Bentley's leather seats creaking under Alexander's shifting weight. He gripped the wheel too tight, knuckles paling against the dark hide, as if steering could outrun the echo of Lila's words. A father's love, just once. It wasn't a wish, it was a scalpel, slicing through the scar tissue he'd layered over years of solitude. By the time he reached the penthouse garage, the envelope's promise felt like a noose, tightening with every floor the elevator climbed. He burst into his office, a sanctuary of sleek lines and glowing screens, shedding his sodden coat like a skin he couldn't bear. The city sprawled below, indifferent lights mocking his unraveling. Pacing the Persian rug, he poured another scotch third of the day, a record for a man who prided himself on control. Ridiculous, he muttered to the empty room, voice rebounding off glass walls. Childish fantasy, that's all it was. He'd grant the next 3, a studio for her art, a ticket to Paris, whatever gilded cage would silence this nonsense. Love, he wasn't a well of it, he was a vault, locked against floods that had nearly drowned him once. But the image clung, Lila's hand in his, small and fierce, the rain mingling their warmth. He slammed the glass down, amber sloshing over the rim, staining a stack of contracts like blood on snow. External pressures mounted, a board meeting tomorrow, investors circling his latest acquisition like sharks scenting weakness. He couldn't afford distraction, not when his empire balanced on the edge of his unyielding facade. Yet here he was, dialing his assistant for the scholarship details, ensuring Lila's tuition was covered. Transactional armor, yes, but it bought time. Time to explain it away, to retreat into the man who fixed problems, not hearts. Across town, in the cramped apartment Isabella had rented above a laundromat, walls thin as promises, the hum of dryers a lullaby for the sleepless, Lila curled on the threadbare couch, the envelope crumpled beside her like a discarded dream. The space smelled of mothballs and her mother's rosewater, ghosts in every corner, the chipped teapot on the sill, the sketchpad where Lila had drawn fantastical families under starry skies. She clutched a pillow to her chest, nails digging crescents into the fabric, as sobs racked her frame, not the quiet ones from the grave, but jagged, furious gasps that tasted of betrayal. "Why'd you make me ask?" she whispered to the ceiling, as if Isabella could answer from the ether. The wish had spilled out unbidden, a dam breaking under grief's weight, but now it burned, exposed, foolish. Alexander's speechless stare replayed in her mind, not rejection, but a mirror to her own voids, the father who'd vanished with a suitcase and a lie when she was 6, leaving her to forge strength from shards. She clung to it, that raw plea, because letting go meant admitting she was still that scared girl, unworthy of the steady hand she'd craved. Her phone buzzed. Maria, forwarding a message from the estate, debts settled, return to the mansion for the next wish. External chains pulling her back. She could walk away, take the money and vanish to her night classes, paint over the ache. But the pull was magnetic, a defiance blooming in her chest. If he thought he could buy silence, he'd learn her fire wasn't for sale. Wiping her face with trembling hands, she stood, the envelope's weight a talisman. "Not done yet," she said to the empty room, voice stealing like a blade drawn. Tension coiled tighter, his denial a wall, her clinging a siege. Walking away, not an option, not when the spark had already scorched them both. "As we hit this wall of resistance, pause with me. When has a moment of raw honesty in your life made you want to run, but something deeper held you fast? Share your turning point in the comments. Your truths could light the way for someone else's breakthrough. If this tension tugs at you, like and subscribe. The reunion's worth the fight." The storm hit like a vengeful chorus that evening, winds howling through the city canyons, rattling the penthouse windows with the fury of unspent grief. Lila arrived at the mansion's service entrance just as thunder cracked, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder, soaked jeans chafing against her skin. She'd come for the next wish, she told herself, practical, pointed, a roof over her head until she sorted the apartment lease, debts be damned. But the skies opened wider, sheets of rain blurring the world into watercolor smears, trapping her cab miles away. No choice but to knock, knuckles rapping the heavy oak like a challenge. Alexander answered himself, unusual, his sleeves rolled to elbows, a day's stubble shadowing his jaw. The foyer light haloed him, casting his broad frame in stark relief against the storm's chaos. "Miss Voss," he said, voice pitched over the gale, but his eyes flicked to her dripping form. Lingering on the water pooling at her feet, not pity, exactly, something warmer, reluctant, like sunlight-piercing clouds. "The roads are flooding, stay." She bristled, shaking droplets from her curls, the scent of wet earth clinging to her like a defiant perfume. "Not charity, Mr. Hale, just logistics, until the rain stops." But the wind snatched her words, slamming the door behind her with finality. Inside, the mansion felt vast yet confining, marble echoing their footsteps, the air thick with beeswax polish and the faint ozone bite of the tempest outside. He led her upstairs, not to the servants' wing, but to a guest suite overlooking the churning Hudson, plush king bed draped in ivory linens, a fireplace crackling to life under his quick hands. "Dry off, dinner in an hour." It was gruff, almost brusque, but his fingers brushed hers, passing a towel, accidental, electric, a spark that made her breath hitch. She watched him go, broad shoulders tense under his shirt, wondering. At the man who commanded fortunes, but fumbled with flames. Dinner was a reluctant ritual in the formal dining room, candlelight flickering across crystal and silver like hesitant confessions. The table stretched between them, laden with roasted lamb and rosemary, steam curling in the draught from shuttered windows. Alexander poured wine deep garnet in balloon glasses, his movements precise, but his gaze darted to her, tracing the way her damp dress hugged her frame, the firelight gilding her skin to gold. "You're staring," Lila said, fork pausing midair, her tone laced with barbs to mask the flutter in her chest. She wore one of Isabella's old shawls, frayed silk against her collarbone, a talisman against the intimacy of it all. He cleared his throat, swirling his glass, the liquid catching shadows. Habit, assessing assets. A pause heavy with subtext, then softer. "Not you, the storm, it's biblical." She laughed, a sharp, unexpected trill that cut the tension. Like glass, biblical, coming from the man who buys his way out of floods. What's next? Arc blueprints. But her eyes met his, holding, and the room shrank, the rains tattoo a private symphony. Proximity unearthed it, the subtle pull, his quiet strength mirroring her unyielding spark, attractions blooming like wildflowers in cracked stone. "Tell me," he ventured, leaning forward, elbows on the damask cloth, a breach of his own etiquette. "The second wish, make it count." His voice was low, inviting, but edged with the resistance still simmering from the grave. Lila toyed with her napkin, fingers tracing the embroidered edges, silence stretching like taffy. "Not yet, storm's not done with us." Outside, lightning forked, illuminating his face, vulnerable for a breath, the lines around his eyes deepening with unspoken want. She felt it too, the draw, reluctant as roots seeking light through soil. Dinner stretched on, barbs giving way to questions, her art, his first failed. Start up, each word a thread weaving them closer, the storm ensuring they couldn't flee what was surfacing. Not just wishes, but the fragile map of two souls, bound by force, yearning to connect. The storm had ebbed to a restless murmur by midnight, leaving the mansion wrapped in a hush broken only by the occasional creak of settling beams. Lila couldn't sleep, her mind a whirlwind of half-formed sketches, the dinner's charged silences replaying like a film reel stuck on loop. Slipping from the guest's suite in socks that whispered against the runner, she wandered the upper halls, drawn by a sliver of light under a door she'd never noticed. The east wing, cordoned off by velvet ropes like a museum's forbidden exhibit. Curiosity, that old thief, urged her forward. She nudged the door ajar, the hinges sighing like a secret exhaled. Inside, moonlight filtered through dust-moted curtains, illuminating a room frozen in time, a nursery untouched, its walls papered in faded safari. Animals, a rocking chair draped in a quilt yellowed by neglect. In the corner, a crib stood sentinel, rails carved with tiny elephants marching in eternal parade. Lila's breath caught, fingers trailing the wood's smooth grain, cool as a forgotten promise. A mobile dangled above, paper stars yellowed at the edges, and on the changing table a tiny bracelet, silver, etched with a single initial, E. She lifted it, the links chiming softly, and the flood came unbidden, her own flashback, sharp as shattered glass. 6 years old, pigtails askew, standing in the doorway of their old trailer, clutching a drawing of a family picnic, stick figures under a lopsided sun. Her father, suitcase in hand, eyes averted like she was a bill he couldn't pay. "Gotta go, kiddo, big job in the city." His voice gravelly with whiskey, not regret. The door clicked shut and Mama's arms wrapped around her, whispering, "He'll come back, me ammer, wishes have a way." But he didn't. Years of birthdays marked by. Empty chairs, Lila forging armor from charcoal and canvas, drawing the fathers she invented, strong and steadfast, to fill the void that echoed in her chest like a hollow drum. The door creaked behind her, Alexander, silhouetted in the threshold, his shirt untucked, face etched with shadows that deepened at the sight. "You shouldn't be here." But his tone wasn't anger, It was fracture, voice cracking like thin ice underfoot. Lila turned, the bracelet dangling from her fingers like an accusation. "E for Alina," she asked, soft but unyielding, the subtext a blade. "What ghosts do you hide that mirror mine?" He stepped in, closing the door with a gentleness that belied the storm in his eyes, leaning against it as if to bar the world or himself from escape. "5 years ago," he said, words measured, each one a stone dropped into still water. His gaze fixed on the crib, distant, as if seeing not the room but the blood on white tiles, the sterile beep of monitors flatlining hope. Flashback gripped him, Alina in the hospital bed, hand on her belly, laughing through contractions. "Our little explorer, Alex, he'll have your stubborn chin." Then the hemorrhage, swift and merciless, stealing breath and future in a crimson tide. He'd held the bracelet, meant for a wrist that never formed, whispering apologies to the empty bassinet. "We lost her, both of them. I sealed this away because opening it means admitting I failed them." Lila's throat tightened, the bracelet heavy in her palm, a clue that shattered the tycoon's facade, revealing the man who'd buried his heart with his losses. She crossed to him, close enough to smell the faint cedar of his cologne mingled with scotch-laced vulnerability. "My father, he left with a lie in a suitcase. I was 6, drew him pictures for months, wishing him back. Mama said wishes were magic, but his was just gone." Her voice trembled, not with pity, but recognition. The mirrored wound, abandonment's twin to miscarriages. "Theft, we both know the shape of empty, don't we? The way it carves you hollow." He reached for the bracelet, fingers brushing hers, deliberate this time, a tether in the dim. "Your wish, at the grave, it wasn't childish, it was brave, braver than I've been." His eyes met hers, raw, the mystery intensifying. Were they shattering under truth's weight or forging something unbreakable? She saw it, the pull unexpected, like roots entwining in dark soil. He cupped her hand around the silver, his thumb tracing her knuckles. "What if we wished together? Not to fill the empty, but to build around it." The air thickened, their breaths sinking in the nursery's hush, connection strengthening like a bridge mid-build, fragile, but defying the chasm. Outside, the last raindrops tapped the pane, a Morse code of possibilities unspoken. Dawn crept into the nursery like a hesitant guest, gilding the crib's rails in soft rose, as if the room itself were waking from its long slumber. Alexander hadn't moved far, perched on the rocking chair's edge, the bracelet now looped around his wrist like a makeshift talisman, its silver cool against his pulse. Lila sat cross-legged on the quilt-draped floor, her back against his knees, the shawl slipping from her shoulders to pool like spilled ink. The air between them hummed with the aftershock of truths laid bare, but the storm's retreat had ushered in a fragile truce. No more walls, just the tentative architecture of two people piecing themselves into view. She tilted her head back, curls brushing his slacks, and caught his eye with a half-smile wry, the kind that dared the world to stay heavy. "You know, for a guy who builds life-saving tech, this place looks like it could use a remodel. Elephants marching into oblivion. Bit on the nose, don't you think?" Her voice lilted, injecting humor like a splash of paint on a monochrome canvas, lightening the ache without dismissing it. Alexander's lips twitched, a rare fracture in his stoic mask, evolving into a chuckle that rumbled low, surprising them both. "Guilty." Alina picked the theme, said our kid would conquer jungles before crawling. I kept it frozen, safer that way. He rocked forward slightly, his hand finding her shoulder, tentative then steady, fingers kneading the knot of tension there with a kindness born of quiet observation. The touch was simple, unhurried, a memory stirring. Nights he'd imagined tucking in a child, now redirected into this unexpected care. Lila leaned into it, vulnerability blooming like a flower unfurling at first light. "Mama used to tell me stories to chase the dark, not fairy tales, real ones, like how she stowed away on a bus from Oaxaca at 16, chasing a job that paid in dreams. She'd laugh about the chicken that escaped her basket, crapping all over the seats. A giggle escaped her, genuine and bright, pulling him with it. their laughter mingled, a shared vibration that warmed the room, chasing shadows. From the corners, for a moment, peace settled, safety in the absurdity, the ordinariness of flawed lives colliding. "Tell me one of yours," she murmured, turning to face him, knees drawn up, her green eyes soft as moss after rain. A memory, not the empire building, the boy before the boardrooms. He paused, gaze drifting to the window where the city stirred awake, then back to her, relatable in his hesitation, the proud man yielding to the lonely one beneath. "Summer camp, age 12. I built this ridiculous fort in the woods, sticks and mud, convinced it'd withstand a hurricane. Then the rain came and it collapsed on me. Sat there soaked, crying like an idiot until the counselor found me." He didn't laugh. "Just handed me a marshmallow on a stick and said, 'Next time, build with heart, not just hands.'" His thumb traced her collarbone idly, a gesture of opening, subtext whispering, "I'm building with you now." Lila's hand covered his, interlacing fingers with a sigh that spoke volumes. Unsaid, heart's messier, but yeah, feels like healing. The bond formed there, fragile as spun glass but real, woven from humor's spark, memory's thread, kindness's quiet anchor. She rose, pulling him up with her, and they swayed in place, a makeshift dance to the distant coo of mourning pigeons. His arms circled her waist, her head resting against his chest, the steady thrum of his heartbeat a lullaby against her ear. It felt possible, this unexpected love, budding in the ruins of loss, a wish granted not by magic, but by the courage to hold on. But as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the threshold, a faint ring echoed from downstairs, his phone, insistent as fate's reminder. The world outside waited, jealous of their sanctuary, hinting that peace, though tasted, was not yet theirs to keep. The afternoon sun slanted through the boardroom's blinds like accusatory fingers, casting striped shadows across the mahogany table where Alexander's empire convened. He'd left. The nursery's warmth, with a lingering kiss to Lila's temple, whispered promises of dinner, of weaving their stories into something lasting. But reality intruded, as it always did, the acquisition vote, voices droning over projections and pie charts. He sat at the head, tie straightened like armor, but his mind wandered to her laugh, the way her fingers had fit his palm like a key turning in a long-locked door. "Mr. Hale," the CFO's voice snapped him back, a smirk curling under his mustache. "Earth to Alexander. We're tabling the biotech merger unless you weigh in. Or are you too busy with that? Maid's daughter PR stunt." Laughter rippled, polite at first, then barbed, the room's air thickening with cigar smoke and condescension. Alexander's jaw clenched, a vein pulsing at his temple. "Watch your tone, Harlan." But the VP leaned in, voice oily as spilled ink. "Come on, boss, 4 wishes. It's gold, feeds the benevolent billionaire narrative. Hell, leak it to the tabloids and your stock jumps 10 points. The girl's a prop, right? Sweet little sob story for the shareholders." The words landed like shrapnel, shredding the fragile bloom in his chest. Prop, stunt, everything they'd shared, nights of vulnerability, the bracelet's shared weight reduced to a ledger line. He rose, chair scraping like a growl, but before he could retort, his phone buzzed on the table. Lila's name, a text, "Meet me in the foyer. Found something in the library." Zoxo. Innocence in pixels, oblivious to the venom coiling here. Downstairs, Lila paced the library's Persian rugs, a leather-bound volume open in her hands, Isabella's old journal, tucked in a forgotten drawer, pages yellowed with recipes and regrets. "He sees you, Mihija. Not the maid's girl, the dreamer. Wish bold." Her heart swelled, unexpected love feeling less like fairy tale, more like fate's quiet insistence. But as voices filtered from the boardroom, muffled at first, then clear through the cracked door, her steps faltered. Prop for the cameras, wishes, pathetic. Hale's gone soft, next he'll be playing daddy to the help. Lila froze, blood roaring in her ears, the journal slipping to thud against oak floors. Misunderstanding bloomed vicious, twisting his silences into calculations, their bond into pity's cruel joke. She burst in, cheeks aflame, eyes locking on Alexander's stunned face amid the suit's smirks. "You bastard," she hissed, voice slicing the room like a whip crack. Harsh words tumbled, fueled by the abandonment scar ripping open. Not again, not this. All of it, the nursery, the talks, a stunt, Mama's dying wish, my heart on a platter, and it's just PR. God, I was stupid. Thought you saw me, but I'm just the maid's daughter, aren't I? The charity case to polish your halo. The board fell silent, a vacuum sucking air from lungs. Alexander surged forward, hand outstretched, face ashen, flawed pride crumbling under the weight of her pain. "Lila, no, it's not. Save it." She recoiled, tears hot and furious, subtext screaming unworthy, always unworthy. "You don't get to play savior when it's convenient. I wished for love, real love, and you turned it into a transaction, like him, like my father." Her voice broke on the last, the lowest point crashing down, the bond shattered, glass underfoot, leaving her questioning if she was ever more than a ghost in his marble halls. Worthy of this man, this unexpected spark. The evidence mocked her, no. She whirled, fleeing down the corridor, sobs echoing like accusations. Alexander called after her, "Lila, wait," but his feet rooted, the board's eyes boring into him like judgments. The shatter complete, he sank into a chair, head in hands, the bracelet burning against his skin. What have I let them make of us? The empire loomed, cold and vast, but emptier now, the cost of his world tearing away the one bridge to hers. Questioning everything, was he worthy of her fire or just the ashes of his own? Regrets. Dawn painted the mansion's foyer in strokes of gold and rose, filtering through the grand arched windows like a benediction long overdue. Alexander waited by the marble columns, those same ones that had once echoed his empty victories, hands clasped behind his back, the bracelet glinting on his wrist like a vow etched in silver. He'd arrived early, the night's choice weighing on him like a mantle shed. No more vaults, no more transactions. Just him, flawed and open, heart laid bare on the polished floor. The air hummed with possibility, scented faintly of fresh rain, and the jasmine Isabella had planted in the courtyard years ago, roots enduring, blooming against odds. Footsteps echoed from the service stairs, light, determined, and there she was. Lila, curls tousled from a sleepless vigil, shawl draped like a cape over her simple dress. Her green eyes, still shadowed with the shatter's bruise, met his across the expanse, holding steady. No running now, the choice had. Bridged them, tentative but true. She paused at the threshold, the foyer vast between them, mirroring the cemetery's mud-slick divide that had started it all. "You came," he said, voice low, threaded with wonder. A man reborn, the tycoon's armor cracked to reveal the lover beneath. She crossed the space in measured steps, stopping close enough for him to catch the lavender on her skin, the faint tremor in her breath. "I chose to, like you said every dawn." A beat, vulnerability flickering, then her hand found his, fingers interlacing with the same quiet click from the grave. The touch echoed it all, rain-soaked hands, nursery confessions, the shatter's sting now forging gold. Alexander's free hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing a tear track that wasn't from sorrow. "Layla, I'm sorry. For the silence, for letting their poison twist us. You weren't a stunt, you were the spark. My wake-up, that first wish, it left me speechless because it was mine too. A father's love, yes. But more a family's with you." His words tumbled, deep and unfiltered, subtext weaving redemption. "I choose you wholly, unexpectedly." She leaned into his palm, eyes shining like river stones under sun. "And the rest, Mama's 4 wishes, they're ours now." A smile broke, tentative then radiant, the unexpected love blooming full, love at last, not wished for but earned in the ruins. He nodded, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket, not grand, just a simple band etched with stars, echoing the nursery mobile. "Second wish, a promise, to build with heart. Marry me, Lila, not as savior or prop but partner, equal in the mess." Laughter bubbled from he. Our joy's first notes chasing shadows. Yes, but third, we remodel that nursery together, for us whatever comes. She slipped the band on, their hands steady now, a gesture repeating the grave's offering, palm to palm, unbreakable. And fourth, he murmured, forehead to hers, breath sinking in the golden light. She whispered, echoing her first plea with transformed fire, a father's love, but ours, the family we make, real, warm, forever. He kissed her then, slow, profound, the world narrowing to the press of lips, the shared pulse of hearts mending. No more divides, just them, transformed, his loneliness alchemized to belonging, her abandonment to fierce trust. They pulled back, foreheads touching, laughter mingling as the sun crested fully, bathing them in warmth. Outside, the city stirred, but here, in this foyer reborn, love had won, at last, unexpectedly, eternally. As our story circles home, hearts reunited in that golden light, reflect with me. What's the unexpected love in your life, the one that shattered walls and built bridges instead? Share it below. Your tales of redemption could inspire a stranger's dawn. If this journey moved you to tears or triumphs, drop a like, subscribe for more emotional odysseys, and let's keep wishing boldly together. Until next time, choose love every time.